Welcome back to the place where we don't just skim headlines, we peel back the layers and listen for the heartbeat behind the glitter. You are watching Turkish series Stars, the archive for viewers who crave stories with depth and artists treated with respect. If you've been looking for a corner of the internet that treats entertainment like a living, breathing craft, you've arrived. Tonight, our lens settles on a tale that feels less like a publicity spark and more like the quiet machinery of fate at work. We're tracing the slow, magnetic pull between Gökberk Yıldırım and Cemre Arda, two names that, when spoken together, seem to bend the air around them. This isn't about hype or noise. It's a chronicle of eye contact that outlasts the camera, of pauses that speak in paragraphs, and a bond nurtured in the margins of a screenplay. Before we unravel it, make your seat in this circle permanent. Subscribe so you never miss a careful, compassionate deep dive. Hit the notification bell to catch the truth the moment it surfaces. And if you want to support independent storytelling, tap the join button below. Your belief keeps Turkish series stars alive. Settle in, we're about to translate a love that learned to whisper louder than the crowd. When orbits align to understand the force of what we're witnessing, we have to rewind to the spark point, a casting decision that, in hindsight, feels less like strategy and more like serendipity. When Gökberk Yıldırım and Cemre Arda met beneath the relentless blaze of set lights, it wasn't the cinematic explosion that burns hot and vanishes by morning. Those present recall something subtler and stronger. The temperature in the room dropping by a degree, the air thickening with attention, a silence that wasn't emptiness but calibration. Their wavelengths met, and even before Serkan and Ida spoke on screen, something unspoken planted roots. Viewers tuned in expecting a standard arc, a familiar push-pull between two fictional hearts named Serkan and Ida. But what held them wasn't plot arithmetic. It was a current that leapt past the lens and landed inside living rooms with the ache of recognition. As Serkan and Ida, Gökberk and Cemre didn't merely exchange lines. They traded weather patterns. Their teasing landed like a game of chess one move ahead. Their stare-downs carried traces of old stories the script never wrote. Storm scenes crackled with a voltage that felt unscripted, and their reconciliations exhaled a relief that could be felt on couches across continents. Where does fiction stop breathing and reality begin? It's the question that haunts every pairing that feels too true, the thought that creeps in when performance turns indistinguishable from admission. Are we watching two experts in a flawless duet, or two guarded souls trying not to betray that the song is real? Social media answered with the only language it knows, multiplication. Edits bloomed like wildflowers. Threads morphed into theses. Behind-the-scenes seconds were slowed and dissected until micro-reactions became artifacts. Together, Gökberk and Cemre became a double-star phenomenon, a center of gravity pulling in the devotion of thousands of accounts orbiting them with unwavering faith. But fame, as ever, is a two-edged instrument. The louder the admiration, the sharper the intrusion. Against that swell, they chose rare discipline. Interviews offered courtesy without confession. Compliments arrived without bait. Warmth never turned to overshare. They drew a clean line made of grace, guarding the garden they were tending beyond the crowd's footprint. A pause for reflection. Let's take a breath, Turkish series stars family, and ask the question that sits at the edge of our screens. Do artists owe us the whole of their private lives because we carry their characters so close? Or does mystery make the thing shine? When you watch Gökberk and Cemre keep their dignity intact, do you admire the boundary, or does it needle your curiosity? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's talk like grown-ups. And if you appreciate this respectful touch, tap like. It tells the algorithm we're here to raise the standard. The siege of surveillance, of course, silence doesn't end speculation, it feeds it. With little to hold, the collective imagination began to pour its own cement. Paparazzi mobilized like weather, circling cafes, marking parking lots, lingering near studio gates, anywhere a shadow might be stretched into a headline. Entertainment desks turned into codebreakers, assigning meaning to angles and captions and coincidences with the confidence of diviners. One photo of them occupying the same corner of the frame, no matter how incidental, could keep timelines humming for days. Even polite denials were no match for the river once it began running. The set, with its long nights and endless rehearsals of tenderness until touch becomes muscle memory, forges an intimacy unlike any other. Carrying a story that big means you lean into your partner. You borrow their rhythm. You laugh because your bodies are too tired not to. You celebrate quietly because the world seems to be listening. A private dialect is born when two people perform closeness while guarding the real thing. In that space, respect can soften into something more durable, more elusive, and far more precious than the public is ever owed. A change in pitch and then, something in the sound shifted. There was no orchestrated rollout, no red carpet handholding planned by a manager. It happened because truth, when it has roots, eventually grows loud enough to be heard even through a crowd. Murmurs moved along corridors and into the ears of journalists who learned long ago to interpret tone over text. Gökberk had stopped pirouetting around the topic. He didn't stage a confession. What he offered was rarer, he spoke in a voice that wasn't performing. What counts as an admission from a man who treats his inner life like a locked script? Not a billboard phrase. Something gentler. Something that lands and stays because it doesn't try to conquer you. Gökberk and Cemre understood the value of going slowly. They refused to let the industry's appetite set their tempo. They ignored the drumbeat of spectacle even as the spectacle tugged at their sleeves. The evidence of reality for months, they avoided anything that could be misread as proof. Then a softening, not an announcement, but a smell of lived life. A photograph surfaced that felt like a memory, not a campaign. A gesture of support appeared in a week that would have exhausted anyone. An evening side by side on a night that asked nothing of them, and when the flashes found them, they didn't scatter like startled birds. Fans watched the unfolding like a prestige slow burn, certain the story knew how to pace itself. Which brings us to the echo still vibrating through the fandom. The moment Gökberk recalibrated his public language. Clips exist now, snippets from interviews, fragments snatched by hot mics, where you can hear it. He stops referencing a co-star as if she were simply a colleague and begins to speak of Cemre like someone whose map he has traced with care. Not sugar. Not press tour sweet talk. It was respect with roots tangled in time. Through Gökberk's eyes watch his face when an interviewer teases the inevitable. Are you two more than partners in fiction? And something unpracticed appears. Gone is the safe grin shaped by media training. In its place, a smile that lands before he can remember the lens. He describes in her a quiet empathy, a discipline that mends chaos, a gift for reading a room and settling it without needing applause. Picture the setup, studio chair, warm lights, a question aimed straight at the truth. This time, he doesn't sprint for cliché. He pauses. He selects. He answers as if choosing stones to skip across water. He doesn't hand the tabloids their trophy phrase, but he offers something more telling. He says plainly that Cemre matters to him beyond the frame. He calls her his compass on the noisy days, the voice he reaches for when the world scrapes at his edges, the talent that sharpens his own and makes the grueling hours lighter. He points to her steadiness, her sly wit, the borders she holds when the industry would eat them, the way she keeps the work clean without ever claiming a crown. He doesn't build a fairy tale. He testifies to her character. And after you hear that, the phrase "the truth about Cemre Arda" starts to mean something else entirely. Not a gotcha headline, but a portrait painted by someone who has been watching with kindness and attention, intelligence without condescension, generosity without spotlight, a spine that refuses to bend for applause. Vindication for the faithful. Gökberk saw it. He cherished it. And by saying it aloud, without theater, he opened a window that didn't feel like trespass. From a man who rarely parts the curtain, it landed like intimacy. The reaction traveled fast and bright. Feeds flickered on like switchboards. Fans who had believed all along began stitching proof into tapestries, interview fragments captioned with care, set against music that lodged beneath the ribs. They laid the finest beats of Serkin and Ida next to these new glimmers of Gökberk and Cemre, arguing through collage that fiction and life finally shared a tempo. Skeptics, of course, came forward. They always do. Maybe it's calculated. Maybe it's too quiet. Maybe it's not quiet enough. But doubt withers when dignity holds. They didn't cash in with easy crumbs. They refused the algorithm's hunger for constant feeding. They offered glimpses, not a live stream. The message was unmistakable without being spoken: intimacy is not a currency here. The legacy of restraint, and so we reached tonight's landing. The title you clicked wasn't a trick, it was a promise. Gökberk did open a window. What blew through wasn't scandal. It was substance. The truth about Cemre, in his own careful words, sounded like reverence tempered by experience and warmed by care. What captivated millions wasn't a stunt. It was two people carrying a partnership the audience adored as Serkin and Ida, and allowing it to echo, carefully, privately, beyond the director's cut. They never surrendered the pen. They wrote at their own pace, in ink only they can read. As we sign off, remember that Turkish series Stars is here for this kind of thoughtful storytelling. If it matters to you, make sure you're subscribed. Tap the bell. Consider joining our member circle by hitting join below. And tell us, which Serkin and Ida moment do you now suspect was simply a mirror, reflecting something real? Leave your theory in the comments. Until next time, hold this close. The quietest love stories are often the ones that thunder when the room goes still. This has been Turkish series Stars. Thank you for watching.